Welcome to Harbinger's flagship interactive webinar, Power Hour. Select the right speaker for audio output. Test your speaker from audio settings. If necessary, join the webinar using your phone. Use the Q&A panel to share your questions. This webinar is being recorded. Attendees will receive the recording. Let's tune in.
Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. My name is Vikalp and I'm the moderator for today's exciting event. I'll firstly like to thank you for taking time out to attend the Power Pack webinar focused on associations hosted by Harbinger. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, I'd like to inform that the Power Hour is a series of interactive roundtable discussions hosted by Harbinger, where industry stalwarts share their experience and insights on a particular topic. The topic for today's discussion is reimagining associations thriving in the digital age. As the topic has it, we will be today throwing some light on not just survival, but how they are thriving and on how associations are managing membership, engagement, growth, and the way forward. And with that, I'd like to introduce host for the today's roundtable, Shrikant Pattathil. Shrikant has been with Harbinger for more than 25 years now, and during his tenure, he has led offshore software development and sales marketing teams in various capacities. For customer and his team, Shrikant has been source of cutting-edge knowledge of shifting technology paradigms such as client server, web, cloud, and AI. He has recently been instrumental in helping customers in the HR and learning domain solve their product integration and automation challenges. Shrikant, the stage is all yours. I would like you to take it out for a minute.
Hey, thanks, Vikalp, for that wonderful introduction. Welcome everyone for this interesting panel discussion where we are talking about how things are changing for associations and painting a larger picture of what's in the future. And I'm joined by two industry stalwarts from the association and learning domain as panelists, but I'll introduce them in a bit. But before that, let me give you a bit of context of what we're going to discuss today. So first of all, when it comes to associations, we think that they cater mostly to the members or the talent, especially. But I think in my discussions and interactions, it seems like they play an equal role in shaping how the corporate or the enterprises, operate as well. And associations are at the kind of you can say at the center point of both talent and corporate in many domains. So as we go through the discussion and the transformation and discussions we'll be talking, I'm sure we'll touch upon some of those topics as well. Our focus for today is to understand what are the trends, what are the challenges faced by associations and their members, how can we overcome some of them. The whole sort of demographics of people and members that associations have to cater to, what kind of approaches are we taking to make sure that we talk to everyone, or at least the major part of the membership that they cater to. We will also touch upon technology and how the technology shifts are being adopted by associations for delivering things like member engagement and various other initiatives that they're carrying on. And we will do this through a series of questions where the panelists will of course share their experiences and their thoughts of what should be the way forward, so that associations continue to thrive and be an important part of the overall workforce ecosystem. So let me just give you some more insights into some of the data and information that we've collected. As from an association standpoint, it is, how do we grow the memberships, right? How do we grow the revenue? How do we grow the influence in the community? However, if you just focus from the growth perspective, but not think about from the value perspective, you probably miss out. And that's where we see many mid-size or smaller associations, after they go to a certain point, struggle because the value part is sometimes diluted or lost. So therefore, there is importance to continuously focus on what kind of professional network they're building, the industry knowledge, how they're gathering that, and making it more democratic, accessible, uh, and easy to consume, and also the career advancement. So if there is continuous value being delivered, we think that the growth problem will automatically be mute. However, it's easier said than done. So there are a lot of nuances, and with all these market shifts, policy shifts, as well as expectations that the membership has shifting, there are challenges and new ways of doing things, and that's what we will try to focus. One more important trend that we collected is interesting to note, that for associations to be successful, I mean, the general thought process is that, of course, there should be 100% renewals, or probably, a continuous addition of members. But over the last 2 or 3 years, almost one third of the associations are almost struggling to get to even 80%. So only 66% this year associations were able to get renewals more than 80%. So that's an challenge. Uh, on one end, we are saying that associations, we have to deliver more value, we have to do more things. But if the membership is going down, then it can be a problem. So, and again, those being interconnected, is it because there is dip in engagement, the budget constraints that the association are getting up, making them do some cost cuts, which eventually results in engagement issues, or those initiatives not being able to be driven at the same speed that they were able to do it earlier. The other challenges could be, the generational shifts, because the workforce today is not homogeneous anymore. So how do we kind of cater to all those shifts? And is the value proposition only unidimensional? It's not multidimensional. So how can that aspect be solved without, of course, spending a lot of time and effort and money on it, but making sure that every constituent or member is catered to. And finally, we touched upon, could be also a result of technology adoption. If there's lack of funds, if they are not able to stay at the pace that technology is advancing, in terms of how they're engaging with members, what kind of training and curriculums that they're delivering, it could be a possibility that everything is kind of creating sort of a perfect storm, which is driving these members away. And no, both on the new membership side as well as on the keeping up the existing members interested, associations are facing challenges. However, the opportunity is there. Like I said, it's the demand and the need is there. So let's now let me now bring in our panelists and introduce themselves. I'm very fortunate to have both of them here today. I'll start with Nicholas Igneri, founder and CEO, Innovation Learning Ventures, LLC, who has been an industry veteran in the learning and association domain. Nick, if you would like to introduce yourself and also throw some light on the challenges we just mentioned, maybe just as a start.
Sure.
And then, of course, we'll get into details.
Okay, well, great, thank you. And great to be here, great to be on the panel. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So I've been in the association space for well over 20 years. Sometimes I can't believe I have to say that, but it's been that long. And I've had varying roles in association world. I worked for the American Management Association for a very long time as their senior VP of education. So it was very much in the mix of looking at the growth side of that equation that you talked about, like how do we bring new products to market, both in-person products, virtual products, digital products to market, but also making sure those products add value to the membership. And most recently, I was with an association that's focused on business schools, was the largest accreditor of business schools globally. And we had the same challenge, like how do we grow? I mean, there's only so many business schools in the world, right? But how do you grow that through varying products and services? So I think the challenge of value versus growth, I'm not sure how separate they really are. Certainly you have to keep your core value to your membership, but you also need a growth strategy. But that growth strategy has to be tied to adding value. They can't be separate. And sometimes the growth strategy lags the value. Maybe the membership doesn't see the value, or maybe a portion of the membership sees the value in a new service or product, but you have to market and drive the value to the membership. So, and I've seen associations sort of abandon products that really have great potential because they don't see the immediate value throughout the entire membership. So I think that value growth equilibrium is tough to manage, and I've been doing that really kind of delicately over the past 20 years.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for sharing that. And of course, that discussion probably we will
Sure.
extend it during the course of our of this. So let me now bring in Tony Habash. Welcome, Tony. So Tony is the Chief Information Officer and Chief Business Integration Officer of American Psychological Association, one of the largest associations and fairly successful ones. So Tony, great to have you here. And if you can please introduce yourself and also talk about these challenges that we talked about. What's your initial thoughts on that? Tony, you're on mute, I think.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. For saying this is a timely topic and near and dear to our heart. I've been with the association space for 35 years or so now. Spent 15 years at ARP before as head of strategy and planning, and then at the American Psychological Association the last 20 years or so. We actually saw these trends at APA the first time we amplified those signals in terms of the changing expectation for the member base and the engagement model around 10 years ago. And since then, we embarked into a transformation journey across the enterprise. We tried to consume psychology science. We're being a behavior science organization. We rooted our strategy in understanding the human behavior and how to apply that to engage members differently. And we realized early on that the entire organization has to think differently. How we deliver programs and services, how we deliver communication, how we show up for advocacy, how we tell the story of psychology, how do we deliver the right program to the right person in our audiences. And part of that was the digital transformation. But the issue, we felt it is bigger than just the digital. The entire association has to evolve. So we don't think of a membership growth as a membership department function, but it's an enterprise issue to consider. And 10 years ago, we started to see decline in our membership or stabilization. And in the last 7 years or so, we have seen a growth year after year in our membership base because of the various things we put in place. And I'll mention some of them as we go. Last year, we achieved 10.2% growth alone, especially for our graduate students and early career. We cater to a very diverse audiences, as kind of Nicholas mentioned. From students in psychology all the way to retired. We cater to the library market and institutions. We cater to tech companies. We cater to institutions, opinion leaders, and public at large. Because our core mission is to translate psychology science to benefit society and actually apply that translation into action. So we have turned the dial, but through a lot of hard work and focus on what make a difference, focus on data, focus on practice, focus on deep listening and obsession about listening to our members and audiences, and adjust everything we do based on that intelligence. And that's where we are at the moment.
Thanks, Tony, for sharing that. I think, the fact that you've seen that transition and the membership's now growing and put in all these programs and initiatives together, I'm sure as we go through the discussion, it'll be very interesting to hear some examples of what exactly those things were. So as I pose the questions, I think I'll probably look at it in 4 lenses. One is, of course, the value lens. That's where we will focus first. We will also talk about like what kind of market dynamics and demographics and all of that is playing into the association's business model. We'll also talk about the product dynamics, where we'll talk about the whole digital experience, and we'll try to look at AI as how it's disrupting and how people are adopting, and of course finally the people aspect and how they connect with the value when it comes to their relationship with association. So on that note, let me bring up the value-based discussion. And first, go directly to Tony. Tony, I think you said that over a period, there was a period where at APA there was some stagnation in membership growth, and then you turned it around. So, is there something from something you had to unlearn and something that you replaced it with during that course?
That's an excellent question, and the whole notion of value shifted a lot over the years, and what makes a difference. One myth we had to unlearn really was that the member value is not defined by the quantity of benefits we offer. We used to believe that the more programs, discount, resources, learning, convening the discipline, and so on will make a difference. And for years, our digital strategy resolved around building and kind of everything hub, assuming that members equate abundance with value. But what we clearly found was the opposite. Members were overwhelmed, unable to find what matters most to them, and often disengaged because the experience felt transactional rather than purposeful. And what replaced that mindset was the understanding that member value is defined by relevance and experience, not volume. So today our focus is on personalization, journey design, and how to use data analytics and member feedback loops to identify what each segment truly values, whether that's a networking opportunity, advocacy, learning, skill development, and we tailor their digital and in-person experience accordingly. Now, from a technology perspective, what this means is that we had to shift how we design technology ecosystem. Instead of layering tools, we have built an integrated platform that prioritizes usability, data flow, contextual engagements. Value now comes from how intuitive and meaningful a member can connect their goals to our mission. And that is significant to us, not from the length of a benefit list. In other words, we moved from being a warehouse of offerings to being an orchestrator of relevant experiences for our members. And the data showed that that makes a difference for us.
Yeah, that's quite. So you have made some technology changes, and also, you've also made some changes in the approaches of how you kind of interfaced with members, and by continuously kind of engaging them in conversations and stuff like that. So I think that's quite valuable, Tony. I think, of course, I will touch deeper on that point of. Let me just bring Nick in here for one more value kind of a question that's been kind of top of our minds. Like, association cater to various demographics people, right? So in your experience, the members who've already been there, part of the system, as well as the early career ones, do you see that there's a difference in how they perceive value?
Well, it's a great question, and I think this kind of lines up with a lot of conversations about generational differences. One could assume early career people are younger and experienced career are older. But, I think there is a difference, but I don't think it lies where most people think it lies, and I'll explain what that means.
Mm-hmm.
I think, we kind of assume that early career professionals want like accessibility and convenience and everything digital, but I think more experienced members want that too. I know I want that, and I'm not an early career, professional. So we all want convenience. We all want personalization. We all want a sense of community, right? When we join associations, we want to feel like we're part of a group, part of a community. We want networking. We want learning and development. Tony mentioned some of these as well. I think where the difference sits is in the content and the experience. That's where the difference is. So, an early career professional is going to want different content than a more, mature career professional, right? So maybe an experienced professional wants more thought leadership and insight. They want industry intelligence, they want market intelligence. Maybe they need to bring that back and weave that into their conversations back at the office. They want more high value networking, right? Curated events, intimate events. I see these marketed on LinkedIn all the time. I think they're great. Associations, or even for-profit organizations are having intimate dinners and I see a lot of chief learning officer or CHRO groups in particular regions. I've seen a lot of them in the San Francisco Bay Area, very curated, right? So you have 12 executives from very similar industries talking about their experiences, talking about their challenges, talking about how they are working through those challenges. More experienced people may be looking for board positions or committee chairs, where early career professionals are not looking for that type of content. They're looking for content related to growth in their career, knowledge about the industry, in their community, or their networking may more be on job growth and job opportunities in the future. So instead of saying that, early generations want this and older generations want that, I think we all sort of want the same thing. It's what content and what level of personalization we're going to bring to that.
So yeah, on that point, before we move into the market side, which is also probably driving a little bit more in this area, the question that I have for either one of you is that, does that increase when you do more personalization, the cost of delivering, or is just a matter of reconfiguring and probably the cost doesn't impact that much? It's just that we are not thinking enough.
You wanna start, Nicholas? I can comment on it.
Well, I mean, I think that, it could increase costs. You might need more events, but I think that I think a way to kind of figure that out in an association, I've done this a couple of times, is to really create dual pathways or multiple pathways for the membership and really collect the data and see what people are responding to. Are more experienced individuals really interested in these high value networking events, and what value is that bringing to the membership, right? And if that is bringing great value, then you continue. Maybe you test networking for early career professionals. Are people attending? Do they want it digitally? They want it in person? So I think a lot of testing has to happen, and you need to create multiple pathways for the membership to test what the membership is gravitating towards. So could it increase costs? Maybe, but maybe within that increased cost structure, you're actually having a higher renewal rate within your membership. So you have to look at the cost benefit fully to see what the cost is and then what the benefit is and the ROI is on those initiatives.
Yeah, yeah. Makes
Yeah,
yeah.
please
Go ahead, Tony. Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that notion Nicholas mentioned, because if you believe it's important, you will create space to make it happen.
Yeah.
We realize that to make successful change or transformation, we need what we call the 3 Cs. The content and substance and how we deliver those are important. Creating capacity intentionally is important. So if this is really important, then something else should give so we can focus on making things that will make a difference. And we also, in our case, we pay a lot of attention to the culture. What culture elements are working for us and what culture elements maybe we need to tweak toward the future we're heading toward. And having a systematic program like this will allow us to create a space for doing the important work we feel will make a difference. So we feel these days personalization is not an option. You need to listen carefully to the members. We need to understand their career stages and their interest area and their discipline, and what will truly create affinity, what will truly connect with them, and that, to Nicholas' point, through a lot of testing and using the testing and using the data in a coherent way across the organization to adjust every program, every service, every delivery channel to make a difference.
The only thing I'll follow up on that question is there's also a potential opportunity to increase revenue with a tiered membership model, right? So if you have these highly curated events, would the membership be willing to pay more for that? So I mean, you'll have to test that within your own association if there's an appetite for that. But if, maybe in a tiered model where you're getting these services and activities and engagement opportunities at this level, and this level, right? Maybe you put the more intimate, curated, high value engagement activities at a higher price point. I mean, that is an option also.
Yeah, makes sense. I think the value part was important for us to discuss, and there, always the cost part is always a
Sure.
question that I can deliver more value, but it'll cost me more. But what I'm understanding is how you're putting it in terms of, if there could be a revenue angle to it, and plus there could be something that you should be willing to sacrifice if that means the most to your member. So I think both Tony and as Nick, I think those were interesting perspectives. So I'll move to the next section, which dives a little bit deeper on the member side again, and the demographics. So maybe we'll get some more kind of detailed talk on that topic. So from a market dynamics perspective, catering to such a diverse market, I think that's a challenge. But how do we kind of overcome those? So from a Tony, coming to you from an association standpoint, when you are you of course, APA has an identity and it does things in a certain way, and then when you're kind of constantly dealing with new members' expectations vis-a-vis the existing team, and without diluting the core entity, identity and the purpose, assuming those are kind of, the mission and vision sort of statements, how are you kind of addressing this within APA at this point of time?
Yeah, I mean, this is an excellent question, one that we really struggled with for a while to figure out where we will end up with. In our case, we believe that association can bridge generational divides in messaging by focusing less on changing who they are and more on how they communicate who they are. The key is to anchor all messages in the association enduring purpose, the why, and then tailor the tone, medium, and storytelling style to different generational preferences without necessarily fragmenting the brand. So for example, in our case, baby boomers and Gen X often value institutional credibility and legacy. They respond to messages highlighting impact, professional standards, community continuity. Millennials and Gen Z, on the other hand, they prioritize authenticity, inclusion, tangible outcomes. They expect kind of real stories of member impact, very transparent leadership, and a clear alignment with the social value. So rather than developing separate message for each group, we are focused on building a unified brand narrative, but one that expresses the mission and purpose consistently and translate it across channels and storytelling format. So what this means from a technology perspective, how we use data to understand how each generation interacts with the association digitally, and what kind of engagement converts interest into belonging, if you will. And technology allows us today to maintain a single coherent identity while delivering personalized experiences for each member. So for example, for established member, credentialing content is important. For early career members, short form video updates or interactive learning for emerging ones is sufficient. I mean, ultimately, association connect meaningfully across generation when they communicate a timeless mission through a contemporary method. And the goal is not to sound younger or older, it's to sound human, relevant, consistent with the values that make the association worth belonging to in the first place. And this is something we take extremely seriously in every decision, every task we make.
Yeah, thanks, Tony, for giving us how APA approaches it. I think that's quite interesting, and I think quite other emerging associations, as the membership is growing and catering to a diverse audience, how to kind of balance this mission vision vis-a-vis messaging, and how to engage both, whether you're using technology or various things. So that's very valuable. Thank you for sharing that. So Nick, let me bring you in with again that demographics sort of questions, if you will. Specifically from a member journey perspective, are there moments that need to be thought from a redesign for younger cohorts, or people who are just recently coming into the workforce? Do you have any thoughts on that particular aspect?
Yeah, well, let me make sure I wasn't on mute. Yeah, I think that I mean, certainly all phases of the member journey are critically important. I think we can argue probably that we could each argue that each phase is just as important as the other. But if I had to pick one, I would pick the first one, which is the join. I would call the join phase. Like you're prospecting for new members. You're trying to get them to join the membership. I would really focus on that one first, because I think it goes back to your earliest slide, Sharik, about the renewal rate. So if your renewal rate is dropping 20, 30, even 40% a year, you need to keep the new member pipeline pretty healthy, right? So, we certainly need to work on renewal rates and get those as good as we can get them, but invariably we're going to have members drop off. So we need to keep the pipeline of new members healthy. And we're assuming now that new members are probably early career, younger, potential new members. One thing to consider, and I experienced this more in my last organization, not just on the member kind of sign up phase, but also in the engagement phases. Like once we had them and we're trying to show value and we're trying to get them to sign up for events, is the kind of eliminating the friction in the sign-on process. And what do I mean by that? Well, can you offer mobile optimized one-click registration options, both for registering to become a member or registering for an event? And quite often within the association market, they'll say, well, I need all this information on the membership, right, in order to process them. And I'm like, okay, great. I'm not saying that data is not critically important, right? But let's not all ask it up front, because there's fatigue that happens in the registration process. People will just abandon it, right? People will just say, hey, if this is more than 3 steps, I think that's kind of the limit today, is more than 3 steps, your abandon rate kind of goes up very dramatically. So can we get them registered? Can we get them a member with very minimal information, sort of one click or a couple of clicks to get them to become a member? And then ask the information in some way later, right? You then, follow up with the data that you need, or maybe really look at, do I actually need this information and how can I streamline it? So offer, a much more streamlined process if you can. And the other, which I personally love, anytime I sign up for anything that has a login integration with the Google or LinkedIn or Apple, I love that, because it's one less password that I need to put in my book to remember. We all have that. We all suffer from that in our lives, the sort of password and changing them. But providing that login integration with Google just makes life for me much easier. I'm constantly joining things, looking at stuff. If I can sign on through those integrations, it's great. And the other thing I'll offer is to, offer, especially for newer members prospecting, is offer freemiums, right? Say, hey, get this for free for 30 days, experience the value we're going to provide you, experience, what our members get as part of this community, and then, provide the prospective member the opportunity to test and show value in that process. So I would really clean up the registration process, the sign up process, make it much easier, do any logon integrations if you can, offer freemium registration for testing and showing value. The rest of the journey is really all about showing value, right? Once you have the new member signed in and they pay their registration fee, then it's all about showing value in order to get to that renewal.
Makes sense, Nick. Thanks for giving those tips as to how to make it more easy to join in. And also, when ChatGPT came in, they were taking in Google registration. So yeah, I mean,
Right.
no matter how great a platform you are, if you can get people in very easily, then you can figure out, the next steps of engagement and figuring
Right.
out. So yeah, makes a lot of sense. So thanks for sharing those perspectives. So let me move to the next section, where we'll talk, more on the product and technology and the experience standpoint. So because that also is an important piece that associations have to kind of handle to make sure that members stay engaged. So Tony, starting with you, of course, you've mentioned during the course of this, like how you've transformed the digital experience. But if you can give us some more insights into if it's an association that's coming up or tackling with these issues, what could be the improvements that one should prioritize to improve the digital experience and take it from good to exception?
Yeah, this is great. I mean, if you believe experience matters these days, and that's probably the number one element that is driving engagement, then the obsession about continuously improving the experience becomes really important. which means from a digital side is to Nicholas' point, revisiting every touch point and every friction in the process actually suppress the action by 5 to 7%. There's tons of data on that from even behavior science on it. So and I agree with Nicholas also that how a person joined the organization it leaves a big impression on them. The first 90 days makes a huge difference, to the point that at the end of the first year, when you send them the invitation to renew, the decision should be a very easy one for them to make. In our case, in the last 7 years, we have redesigned the joining process several times. And even in between, we continue to tweak on a monthly basis. We monitor kind of where people stop. Is that field needed? Can we simplify it further? What comes next? The roots of this, of our organization is 130 years old or so. And the root of it is the joining process was very elaborate 20 years ago. You really, as a member, had to prove your worth joining the organization. We took 4 or 5 rounds at simplifying that and pivoted from trying to get everything up front to getting enough to join. And then the journey design after that is the one that walks step by step with every member to engage them with the relevant programs, services, offerings, and so on. So a consumer grade signing process is really an onboarding process is absolutely crucial in many ways, because our members, just like any other members, they expect the Netflix, Amazon, and LinkedIn kind of experience in terms of how they connect, and they're comparing us to those. So we cannot anymore play with different standards. The second piece that we found immediately after they join is how do you personalize the journey moving forward? How do you lead them into something meaningful to start with without overwhelming them with the depth of programs and services we have? In our case, we have 50 plus divisions, interest area kind of groups in the discipline. We have very large program journal offerings. We have a lot of volunteer opportunities on the leadership side, as well as reviewers and editors of our magazines and so on. We have tons of webinars and conferences. So the idea was not to present them that as a catalog. The idea was to try to figure out from everything we know about the person, what is the next offer to put in front of them, but each time committing to understand their behavior and understand the first data they tell us and use them. So we pay a lot of attention to listening to members through all kind of means, and that data ultimately ends up in our data warehouse that shapes our marketing strategy and our engagement model on a daily basis.
Yeah, thanks, Tony, for walking us through the things that you've done at APA and, validating that how important the initial registration onboarding experience is. If somebody were to prioritize, I mean, they could get a lot out of it if they made it as seamless as possible. So thanks for sharing that. Nick, I think this is a good time to do a segue into the whole AI discussion. So of course, nobody is no conversation can happen without AI. So so from an association standpoint, what could be the low or low risk of proof of concept that association can start trying with, where you think that they can gain a lot of success, so that the confidence of doing more with AI is there, and the acceleration is there from an experience standpoint and also what they're delivering.
Sure. Well, when I introduced myself, I talked about my association experience, but what I'm doing currently is I'm helping organizations with their learning strategies, associations, and also organizations that are not associations. And I'm also focused in on AI, and I'm focused in on AI for a couple of reasons. One is there's way too much hype in the market, and I'll get into what I mean by that in a second and how to make that more practical. But here's some data I found on AI adoption in associations, right? So 62% of association executives say AI is a top priority. I mean, that shouldn't be surprising for those working in associations. I'm sure you're hearing from senior people that we have to do something with AI. I saw it in my last organization, and we started doing some good work in that space. 48% of associations are exploring or planning AI initiatives. So very early on, thinking about, what should we do, how should we do it, et cetera. 9%, and this is troubling, right? 9% of associations have a formal AI strategy, right? So 48% are doing something or thinking about it, but only 9% have a strategy, right? But really, it should be flipped. 48% should have their strategy set, and then they should be thinking about, now, okay, now that our strategy is in place, how are we going to drive that strategy? And 24% of associations have implemented some form of AI technology. While this data is relevant for associations, it's really not different than organizations that are not associations. So this is pretty common in the market, no matter what type of organization you work for. So, in my experience, what I'm hearing when the work I'm doing currently in my past roles, like what are associations doing in the AI space? I think there's two things that are prominent. One are AI chatbots, right? Because a lot of associations in their membership, they have a lot of questions. We were an accrediting body. A lot of people had questions around the accreditation standards and, how to adhere to them correctly. So in an association, you can really reduce routine kind of inquiry responses using chatbots, right? So a lot of associations are moving in that direction, trying to figure out what that looks like. And the other really, I think, is around marketing. So content creation, writing blogs or writing, emails, adding keywords for SEO, meta tagging, all that could be done now through AI. So I think in those two spaces, you're seeing, and it's really around efficiency and engagement, right? So organizations are looking at AI around efficiency and engagement. But my work is really focused on, okay, now how do you implement that, right? Because there's a lot of hype in the market around AI. There's a lot, people don't trust it. I mean, this data is pretty clear. A lot of people working in organizations don't trust it. They feel like it's going to take their job. They're not sure what it is. They're not sure how to utilize it, right? AI is being used in organizations for individual productivity pretty well. So someone may have a subscription to ChatGPT, and they use that to help them writing or help them develop PowerPoints or whatever it might be. But that individual productivity gain is not really pointing towards organizational ROI change, right? It's not leading to that, it's just leading to individual performance improvements. So what I'm working on with clients is how do we take a very practical approach to AI implementations, right? And what I mean by that is working with organizations to focus on a strategic use case. How do we want to use AI? Are we looking at chatbots? Are we looking at improving marketing efficiency, whatever it might be? Define the problem, right? Define the success metrics. By implementing this, we are going to have reduce X or increase by X. And I think this is really important, selecting a cross-functional team to work on solving that problem using AI, right? Because what I see quite frequently is people think it's a tech problem and it should be in the tech and data sector in the organization and not in the business sector. And I disagree with that. You need a cross-functional team to work on this, right? Because there's business expertise, there's marketing expertise, there's tech and data expertise that needs to come together to solve these problems. And you need to determine the data and the tech that's required to solve that problem. But if you have a cross-functional team, right, who is kind of experimenting, these short cycles of experimentation, of reflection, of refinement, and of application, I think that what that does in the organization, it begins to build muscle around AI, and it begins to build trust in AI. People see that they can actually build their skills in this field and not become irrelevant in the future in the organization. So I think helping organizations take a much more practical approach, defining the problem and working through the solution in short segments and in very focused segments is the way to build capacity within the organization around AI.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for giving that, addressing that very important topic of how, associations can use AI. And the data was also quite interesting in terms of, wanting to do AI, and of course they'll need help, and that's where I think they need to come to individuals like you to strategize and connect the business and the technology value propositions, and do it in a stepwise manner. Makes sense.
When I talk to organizations, a lot of people think it's a tech and data problem, but and this is my personal viewpoint, it's an 80-20. It's an 80% people problem, and it's a 20% tech and data problem. People think it's the opposite, that 80% tech and data, they have to fix it, we'll figure it out later. But I think it's actually flipped. You really have to look at the culture of the organization, the change management processes, the leadership support, the talent readiness, and then the tech and data readiness. So it's sort of 80% in the human space and 20% in the tech space.
I understand. Makes a lot of sense. So I'll kind of, since we're probably 10 minutes in, towards the end, maybe the last section we'll talk about the people aspect, like what's the member expectation from a value standpoint, and how do we, what advice or experiences we have to share with the audience on that front. So Tony, coming back to you, and I think it also leads about how APA is using technology in terms of redesigning member experiences, and either you can speak at it from an AI perspective, or also some of the other redesign initiatives you might have done to impact the members.
Yeah, we feel clearly members are expecting connection and curation from the organization. And whether it's how we approach AI or how we approach the digital transformation is very similar. AI for us is a big initiative, and the framework that we're operating from has 3 layers. One layer is clearly how we use it internally within the organization, and we have launched several initiatives in that space, not just around Gen AI kind of usage, but also now we deployed several agentic AI engines within the enterprise, and we're working on a few more coming up. But the second, which is also very important for us, is how do we educate our audience, the psychology in this space, about how AI can be helpful in the clinical side of psychology, in the research of psychology, and in the education or into the industrial organizational psychology at large. And the flip of it is even more important, which is we believe that the intersection of machine and human, that particular component, psychology has a lot to add in that space to help design better AI algorithm, help in testing, help in understanding guardrails and biases and mitigate to those. So we're actually launched this year what we call APA Labs. The APA Labs is a program working with tech companies to bring psychology science to help them design better AI solutions. And we're launching several programs in that space just in the last 90 days or so. And the third one, which is very significant, we believe behavior science like ours, psychology, can contribute to a lot on helping society understand the impact of AI and the good use of it, the good use patterns. So we're bringing the science to really talk about the impact of AI on society and how to deal with the implications. And that's shaping our advocacy agenda, shaping how we communicate with opinion leaders and how we communicate with members and other organizations we deal with. Internally, we use a lot of AI today to personalize content across the different channels. So the web is an obvious one. We are recommending, based on AI algorithm, the next piece of content relevant to what you have been reading or your interest area. So we combine what we know about the person with their navigation habits on the website, and then the next piece of content surface itself in that regard. And we do this within our email campaigns. We have a huge culture around emails. Tens of millions of emails goes into marketing and newsletters and so on. And in the last year or so, we start to put an engagement model for each member on one of the email touch points that they receive, that the algorithm is tell us that there's a high chance that this person, he or she, will be interested in. So for example, instead of presenting to you the 94 journals we have, if this person is a researcher, then from their published research, from their navigation habits, from what they told us, from their interest area, career stage, we're pretty much identifying for them the top 2 journals that might be the most relevant, and whisper that inside a newsletter as just a side link or a side experience. And because of these kind of experiments, we're seeing the click-through rates doubling. I mean, literally doubling. And the time spent on reading a story more than double because of this kind of work. So we're actually learning from this and expanding these kind of offerings further and deeper. That's where we are at the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. I'd love to go deeper on that. I think you've outlined 3 or 4 different points of how the whole how you could redesign and build better member engagement. I'll bring in Nicholas quickly for one last question. That's about, Nick, how can associations help professionals build future-ready skills, specifically in this whole context of technology and market shifts that's happening so rapidly?
Sure, I'll be quick on this because I know we want to get to some questions. I think that again, there's a lot of hype in AI right now, but I think Tony said this, and I totally agree. It's no different than any other technology transformation that we've gone through in our careers. It's different, certainly, but it's still a technological, innovation that we're dealing with. And I do think that capability building and adoption on any type of technological improvement accelerates when individuals and teams are focused on solving real organizational problems. So, I'm a big proponent, but most of my experience has been in the learning space, is to bring learning as close to the job as possible. Sending people to formal training courses, whether it's classroom, digital, virtual, that's all great for knowledge transfer, but we all know a lot of that doesn't stick. And the only way to get it to stick is to take that knowledge that's maybe delivered or transferred in a formal training session and bring it back and have people work on real problems. This way it gets ingrained into their workflows. People understand the relevance of that content and why it's important for the job. So try to bring your learning as close to the job as possible. Use those formal training sessions to transfer knowledge, but really bring it home on the job experiences.
Makes sense, Nick. Thank you very much for sharing that perspective of how you could bring in and cater to the membership needs. Now, finally closing it out, I think we covered many topics, and I think it'll be hard for me to summarize all of it, but definitely I think the whole onboarding process, registration process, use of AI in and piloting it in the right way, as well as keeping the core value of the association at the center, but catering and personalizing messages across for each members is important. And finally, I'd say that based on where we started, right? I mean, if you want growth in memberships and continuation and all of that, then the value probably has to be as delivered seamlessly and continuously with the kind of technology and processes that you put in place. So I think, and on each of those topics, I'm sure we can have conversations based on the points that both Tony, you and Nick raised. But I think we had a great start to this reimagining associations in the digital age topic. So I'm sure we'll have more opportunities to dig deeper. On that note, let me bring in Vikalp to close the session for us. Vikalp, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Shrikant. This was indeed a very interesting session. I have questions for Tony. Tony, how do you see AI and automation shaping member engagement in the next few years?
I think so. There's a lot to that question. I mean, at the heart of it is making sure that every interaction, every touch point is meaningful to the person, and I think this is where AI can come in. So, for example, we used to have 14 newsletters going to different audiences or sub-audiences within our member. And we collapsed those in the last few years into less than 20% of that. And even within that, we start to see, we track the standard. Is a person clicking to opening it and which story they're reading. We moved that kind of intelligence into a data lake in the last few years. And now we have multiple years to look into at the individual level of all the emails we send to a person. What is their behavior? What stories are opening? What newsletter they're clicking through? Which ones make sense? What days of the week make sense to release? And a lot of that intelligence that's coming out is get fed to our marketing tech team and change the behavior, and into deciding how to curate these stories. So if we are to release a newsletter that has 5 key stories, there will be at least one for a person that we feel it's a higher chance that this person will be interested on that. And sometimes we lead by that. Sometimes it's part of the email, and we see the difference. So if anything, it's allowing us to obsess about continuously testing in a very agile way and continuously modify how we show up for our members. And that learning process is really important. That becomes part of the culture, that our content people, our delivery people, our marketing, our sales, our advocacy, our every program, that this becomes part of how they think about it on a daily basis. And I think that's what adds up to make a difference. And it's very hard work. It's not an easy one. It's a work that we found that we have to be consistent as leadership on, all the way from our CEO to our executive team to everybody, that we send that consistent message about this is how we expect to behave. And then technology comes naturally to enable these kind of experimentation on a continuous basis. So this is how we're approaching it today, and we continue to learn in that journey.
Quite an interesting approach, Tony, I must say. Nick, I have a question for you. What are the best practices for integrating AI without losing human touch? I'll just take a minute and then we'll close the session after this.
Well, I think that it's a tough question to answer because it's going to be dependent on the situation that the organization is facing. But the approach I'm taking with clients is to, when implementing AI, Tony mentioned some of this, is to really look at 5 domains, because I have an assessment that I created that helps organizations look at their maturity level in AI based on 5 domains, and that's AI culture readiness, AI change readiness, AI leadership readiness, AI talent readiness, and AI tech and data readiness. And I think if you, again, it's 80% human, 20% technical. So I think if you are facing an opportunity to implement AI to create efficiency, to create a better member experience, I think you have to look at all those 5 domains in order to ensure that the human touch is incorporated into the solution, right? It cannot just be a tech solution. Again, you can't just say, hey, the tech group created this. I mean, they're very competent in their roles, but they may not understand the member experience and the member journey and the member needs and the member value. That comes with the other domains. So I think, looking at it as both a human and technical problem and ensuring that the human side is embedded in the AI solution is critically important. And then I think you'll keep the human element in the AI solution.
Interesting take. Thank you. Thank you for answering all the questions. And for all the unanswered questions, we will be emailing you the responses. And I'd like to again thank panelists for your time and insights that you have shared with us in this session. For all the attendees, you're welcome to connect with our panelists directly via LinkedIn. We have shared their LinkedIn profiles link right now in the chat window. With that, once again, I thank you, Shrikant, and our panelists for this wonderful discussion. I'm sure we are all going back with some good food for thought for today. And I'd also like to thank our viewers for joining this session through Zoom. You have been an amazing audience. Thank you. Take care and have a good day.